So I've noticed a lot of MMD animations in which the walking or running animations are horribly out of sync with their movements. And since I couldn't find any tutorials on how to synchronize a walking animation with the movement of the model, I finally decided.
Fine. I'll do it myself.
This video will show you how to make a walking animation and how to synchronize that animation with the movement of the model. The first thing I usually do is start on the foot bones. One foot in front, and the other one behind. Be sure not to put the IKP foot bones too far in front or too far behind the body. A stride such as this will do nicely. Now go on to the IK foot bone that's in front of the body and adjust its angle. It's all about observing the basic limitations of the human body as well as natural body movement. For example, if you observe this stock video of people walking, you'll notice that when this woman puts her foot in front of her body to take the next step, her foot's angle runs near perpendicular to the angle of her leg. It's never parallel to the ground until the foot is completely placed down on the ground. Paying attention to the finer details like that will help your animation look a lot more natural and less robotic. Now select both IK and IKP foot bones. Click copy, register them, then go over to frame 6, click reverse, and register them again. Now let's animate the torso and the head. Go back to frame 5, select the lower part of the torso and adjust the Y angle just only slightly. A value of about -5 should do, as a walking person will not strain themselves so damn much when it comes to walking. Now when it comes to the head, whatever the value of the Y angle is on the lower half of the torso, make it the opposite for the head. In this case, the Y angle for the torso is -5. So we'll make the Y angle for the head +5 in order to keep Miku looking straight ahead. Once that is done, select both of the bones, hit copy, register them, go on to frame 6, hit reverse, and then register them again. Again, these are subtle movements of the human body, not easily noticeable, but when combined with the rest of the animation, it will make it look more natural. Now before we begin work on Miku's arms, let's do something about her overly stiff fingers. This is another subtle touch-up. A person who's relaxed will also have their fingers relaxed as well. They will be slightly bent and slightly spread out, not completely stiff and robotic. Let me put emphasis on the word slightly. It's all about thinking about what mood you want your model to be in. Whatever mood they're in will also be expressed in their body language. Keep that in mind when you animate. In this case, Miku is in a relaxed mood, so her fingers should be as well. So let's get back to frame 5, go to Miku's left hand and adjust each digit. Adjust the Z angle value of each and every finger digit to about 10. Now spread them out ever so slightly, but leave the middle finger alone, as whenever the human hand spreads out, the middle finger typically does not move. Now adjust her thumb to where it's closer to the hand. Once all of that is done, click and registered, click copy, click reverse, click and registered again, and register all of them. Now we can finally begin work on her arms. Let's start on her left arm. First, adjust her upper arm. Bring it in closer to the body. Bring her forearm and upper arm forward by just a little bit. Not too much, otherwise she will look like she's overexerting herself. Now adjust her twist bone for her upper arm so her arm twists outward from the body. Again, not too much. Now for her right upper arm. Bring it in closer to the body, then bring it back just a tad. Once all the adjustments are made, select both upper arm bones, both twist bones on her upper arms, and both of her forearm bones. Click copy, register them, go to frame 6, click reverse, and then register them again. Head back to frame 5, down to Miku's center bone and make some adjustments. Click her center bone and lower it to about -0.3. Now the foot behind her body actually touches the ground. Register the bone, go over to frame 6, and register the bone there as well. Now go over to the frame manipulation panel, select all of the keyframes in frame 6, and move it one more frame away from frame 5 so that all the keyframes in frame 6 are in frame 7. Now we'll make some bone adjustments in frame 6. Select the right IK foot bone, set all its angles to 0. Select the left IK foot bone and set its X angle to about -51.3. Select the left IKP foot bone and adjust its Y coordinate to about 1.7. Now select both IKP foot bones and both IK foot bones. Click copy, register them, go to frame 8, hit reverse, and register them again. Now go to frame 5, highlight all the keyframes except for the ones belonging to the finger bones. Copy them and paste them in frame 9. Now if you pay special attention to how a lot of people walk, you'll notice that there's a little bit of a bounce in their walking. This is another subtle touch-up that will also make your walking animation look more natural. So go to frame 6, select Miku's center bone, and adjust its Y coordinate to 0. Then go over to the bone manipulation panel. Click copy, register the center bone, go over to frame 8 and click paste, then register it there as well. Now we can finally spread these keyframes out. I would say that about 10 frames apart from each other will do. If you think this animation is done, then just hold your horses. We still have some fine tuning to do first before we can call this animation completed. If you look at the animation as you scroll through the frames, you'll notice that the IK foot bones that are behind the body does not change its angle soon enough. So we'll have to adjust them. Go over to the frame manipulation panel, select the keyframe for the left IK foot bone at frame 15. And the keyframe for the right IK foot bone at frame 35, and move those keyframes 7 frames over to the left. Now select the keyframe for the right IK foot bone at frame 15, and the keyframe for the left IK foot bone at frame 35, and move both of those keyframes 5 frames over to the left. Keep those keyframes selected, go over to the interpolation curve panel, select rotation, and try to adjust the curve as you see here. Now select the keyframes for the head, the torso, and the arms throughout the entire animation, and adjust the rotation curves as you see here. Now go back to the IKP foot bones. Select the keyframe for the left IKP foot bone on frame 15, and the keyframe for the right IKP foot bone on frame 35. Go to the curves, click the drop-down menu and select Y-axis move, and adjust the curve for both of the keyframes to what you see here. You are now done. Now we can take this entire animation and stretch it out for however long we want it. Just select all the keyframes starting from frame 5 to the end of the animation, except the keyframes for the finger bones, copy them, and paste them however many times you want. I've seen too many MMD videos where their models end up becoming ice skaters because their models move either too quickly.
What is that?
Or too slowly.
What the fuck is that?
In this part, I will show you how to get it down precisely. What we need to do here is note the coordinate of the IKP foot bone that is behind the body. Note its Z coordinate when it's at its furthest point behind the body. In this case, it's 3. Now go through the animation until you come at the point where that same foot bone is at its furthest in front of the body. Note its Z coordinate there as well. In this case, -4.59. Now just do some basic math. Subtract the value of the coordinate when it's at its furthest in front from the value of the coordinate when it's at its furthest behind. That would be 3 minus -4.59. We get 7.59 as our answer. Now go to the model's master bone. Start at frame 5 and look at the master bone's coordinates and angles. They should all be 0. Register the master bone at frame 5. Now go over to frame 25 and subtract 7.59 from 0. Set the master bone's Z coordinate to -7.59 and register it. Now go to frame 45 and subtract 7.59 from -7.59. Set the master bone's Z coordinate to -15.18 and register it. Get out a notebook and a pencil and jot that number down as base master bone value, because we're gonna be referring to that value often for the later chapters. Also jot down the length of the animation. From frame 5 to frame 45 means the animation is 40 frames long. Now you can delete the keyframe in the middle of the animation as it's no longer needed. For every looping instance of the animation, or rather, for every 40 frames, subtract 15.18 from the Z coordinate value of the master bone and register it. Other things I want to point out, if your model's animation has irregular strides in their walking, then you are going to have to perform this entire method for each stride. This is why I suggest making a loopable animation so that you can spare yourself the headache of having to perform this method for every single stride your model takes in their walking. Also, make sure to mind your axes. If your model is traveling along the Z-axis, then place the value in the Z coordinate. If it's traveling along the X-axis, then place the value in the X coordinate. Now this is all fine and dandy for synchronizing a walking animation while they're traveling in a strict 0, 90, 180, or -90 degree angle. But what about every other angle? Well, that's what we'll be covering right now. Now if you're obsessed with aiming for perfection, you can't just move a model along its local Z-axis until it reaches a Z value of positive or negative 15.18. Doing so will result in your model becoming an ice skater. In order to get your model to walk in perfect sync at any angle, you're going to have to use some trigonometric functions. This is the part where you regret the time you were in high school screaming. The trigonometric functions we're gonna use here are the sine and cosine functions. First, Decide on a Y angle for the master bone and make note of it. For this tutorial, let's go with 35.5 degrees and then register it at frame 5. Now we're going to have to make adjustments for the X and Z coordinates. What we are going to do is multiply the base master bone value with the sine, or cosine, of the Y angle of the model. First, I should tell you to mind your quadrants. Whichever your quadrant your model will be in, or is moving towards, add or subtract your value accordingly. Also, whenever you perform this sine or cosine calculation, no matter what your answer is, always take the absolute value of that answer. Now what is an absolute value? Simple. It means that whenever you perform this calculation and get a negative number, you run up and punt that son of a bitch. Because you do not want to add or subtract a negative number and end up with an incorrect coordinate. So now, for the X coordinate, multiply the base master bone value by the sine of 35.5 degrees. 8.81507 is our answer. So since Miku is heading toward the positive X negative Z quadrant, we will add the X value to her current X coordinate. 8.81507 will be your X coordinate at frame 45. So go over to that frame, type that number into the X coordinate and register it. Now for the Z coordinate. Multiply the base master bone value by the cosine of 35.5 degrees. 12.35827 is our answer, and since Miku is heading towards the positive X negative Z quadrant, we must subtract our Z value from the current Z coordinate. Negative 12.35827 will be your Z coordinate at frame 45. Type that number into the Z coordinate and register it. You're done. Behold the synchronization at any angle. I'm sure you've all seen it by now. Animations that whenever the model changes direction, it's not only out of sync, but it's more angular than it is curved. In here, I will show you how to sync it up in perfect curves. In order to pull this off, you will also require the dummy bones that should come included with MMD. The dummy bones are going to be your best friends in this area. Unless you've moved them somewhere else, you should be able to find it in your model folder. The first thing you should consider doing is starting up PMX editor and opening up the dummy bone file. Move all of the bones to the coordinates 00, and then save it as a new file. Trust me, this will make the math you will be doing a hell of a lot simpler. Now if for some reason you can't start up PMX editor or you don't have it, fret not. I have included the edited version of the dummy bone file in the download in the description. Now go ahead and load up your edited dummy bones into MMD. We'll start off by moving Miku onto a random location. You can follow along or choose your own coordinates for her. Don't forget to register it at frame 5. Now take a dummy bone and put it at the exact same coordinates as your model. Do a copy paste job if you have to. Once you have done that, move the dummy bone strictly along its local x-axis, either left or right depending on which direction you want your curve, and as far as you want it, depending on how big you want this curve to be. Register it at frame 5 as well. Now before we do anything else, we'll have to make note of the coordinates of both the model and the dummy bone. So select the dummy bone and make note of its X and Z coordinates. Select your model and note its X and Z coordinates as well. We're making notes of their coordinates because we are gonna have to figure out the distance between the two. For the sake of making things simpler, let's give names to each point. We'll name Miku's master bone coordinates point A, and the dummy bone's coordinates point B. For any of you familiar with coordinate geometry, you'll recognize this formula. We're gonna have to use an MMD variation of the distance formula. Concerning the answer we've gotten, note that number as radius. Because we're gonna be using it for another formula. Now go ahead and link Miku to the dummy bone. Only after we figure out the distance between these 2 points can we finally link Miku to the dummy bone. If you tried to link Miku to the dummy bone before you figured out the distance between the two, then the information on her coordinates would be lost and you would have to do this all over again. So remember, figure out the distance between your model and the dummy bone that you'll link it to first. Then you can link it to the dummy bone. Now to do the other formula. We're gonna have to do a variation of the arc length formula. Typically the arc length formula is used to figure out the length of an arc, given its angle and its radius. But in this case, we don't yet know the angle of our arc. We do however know the arc length, and the radius. So instead, this will be our variation. Now we know the angle that we must either add or subtract to the Y angle of the dummy bone for every 40 frames. You must either add or subtract this value depending on the direction of your curve. Don't forget to register them. You be done, bro. Behold the harmony of mathematical precision. That's all I have to teach you. Now take what you learned here and go make me proud.